What is the best unexplained mystery? Story 1. Probably my favorite unsolved mystery is the Eilean Mor lighthouse mystery. Basically, the three lighthouse keepers disappeared from the island. Inside the lighthouse, they found uneaten meals on the table and missing coats, among other weird things. The creepy part is the logbook. It's supposed to be used strictly for logging work-related entries, but they started using it as a sort of journal and diary. It was explained in the logbook how there was a terrible storm that was lasting for many days, and that one of the keepers, an old weathered seaman, was crying in fear. The last entry said that the storm had ended and everything was calm and fine. A neighboring island reported that there was never a storm. Story 2. The Encephalitis lethargica epidemic that struck between 1915 to 1926. No one knows why it happened, nor has there been a recurrence since the initial outbreak. From Wikipedia, the disease attacks the brain, leaving some victims in a statue-like condition, speechless and motionless. Between 1915 and 1926, an epidemic of encephalitis lethargica spread around the world. Nearly 5 million people were affected, a third of whom died in the acute stages. Many of those who survived never returned to their pre-existing aliveness. They would be conscious and aware, yet not fully awake. They would sit motionless and speechless all day in their chairs, totally lacking energy, impetus, initiative, motive, appetite, affect, or desire. They registered what went on about them without active attention and with profound indifference. They neither conveyed nor felt the feeling of life. They were as insubstantial as ghosts and as passive as zombies. Story 3. The Crewe murders are a pretty good one. A farming couple were murdered and their bodies were dumped in a river. After they were missing for a week, their home was searched and their still living baby daughter was found there. The wife's father was convicted of the crime, but later released when it was discovered that the detective inspectors in charge of investigating had falsified evidence to implicate him. The actual murderer has never been identified. What makes it interesting is that doctors believe that during the week, her parents were at the bottom of the river, weighted down with car parts. Someone was regularly feeding the baby. Story 4. The Legends of Nahanni Valley. It's a valley in Nahanni National Park in the Northwestern Territory in Canada. Very isolated and remote, largely unexplored, also known as Valley of the Headless Men. Many of the tribes in the area avoided it for thousands of years, believing it was an evil, haunted place, inhabited by strange beings, spirits, etc. A violent tribe called the Naha were said to inhabit it, with large men and strange weapons. They liked to decapitate their victims. They mysteriously disappeared one day, never to be seen again. When the frontiermen, miners, etc. started coming in, many mysteriously ended up decapitated. Others just disappeared. It's long had reports of strange lights, UFOs, cryptids, living fossils. Overall, a strange place and interesting to read about. Story 5. So I have a personal experience, sort of. My father had a coworker who was a great guy. Good at his work, fun to talk to. Nobody had any complaints about him. He lived in an apartment right next to work, so the night watchman at the workplace would see him whenever he went out. So one night, he went out in his pajamas, talking on his cell phone, and nodded at the watchman. The watchman didn't think much of it, after all. It's not all that weird to take a walk, even though it was quite late. He didn't think much of it. The watchman didn't see him come back, but he figured he missed him when he went on his bathroom break, probably. But the guy didn't show up at work the next day. Someone from work went to check up, and he wasn't there. Nothing was disturbed, he was just gone. Everyone thought he had dropped dead, ended by thugs or an accident or some medical condition. The workplace filed a police report. Here's when it gets weird. It turns out the guy had created a fake identity. Any credentials he had given were fake. The references he had given had never heard of him. The family address he'd given didn't exist. The police didn't find anything illegal in the apartment, but they didn't find anything that would give a clue as to who he was either. We moved away a few years ago, but I don't think the case was ever solved. It's definitely the best unexplained mystery that I've personally come across. Story 6. Houska Castle creeps me out. Basically, this Bohemian fortress was constructed on top of an ancient Slavo-Germanic pagan ritual site, which was a very deep hole. Nothing too weird about that except for the way the castle was built. For one, it was built in a useless position and served no strategic purpose, so it was not desirable for medieval lords of Bohemia or any invaders to control. Then, people realized that the castle was actually inverted. The fortifications were on the inside, arrow slits, turrets, thick fortress walls slanting into the castle, etc. It's as if they were trying to keep something inside. There's a legend that a Bohemian king lowered a prisoner into the hole that the castle was built on, and he began screaming, so they pulled him back up, and he had aged 60 years and died. Then during World War II, the Germans did actually occupy the castle for a time, but they reported some strange sounds, and when Allied forces stormed the castle, the Germans were dead or abandoned the place. For sure, there's some folklore involved with the place, but the fact that the castle was built clearly to keep something inside opposed to out, and even the Germans had issues with it, it definitely makes it seem like some ancient horror lies within that hole. Story 7, The Campden Wonder. In England, 1660, a 70-year-old man named William Harrison was walking a few miles to the next village when he disappeared. Later, they found his clothes covered in blood, including his hat, which looked like it had been slashed open. Harrison's servant, John Perry, pleads guilty to the act and is executed along with his brother and their mother. 2 years later, William Harrison returns to his village alive, having found his way back to England on a ship from Portugal. The guy claims to have been sold into slavery in Turkey, but the story makes no sense because how would Turkish slaves get to England? And even then, why would they capture a frail old man to do slave labor? To this day, nobody has any idea why the servant confessed to murder they didn't commit, or what actually happened to Harrison. Story 8. The Lead Mask. Mystery of Brazil. The bodies of 2 men found wearing lead masks, covering their eyes with a notebook that mysteriously read, 4:30 p.m. be at the determined place. 6:30 p.m. swallow capsules, after effect, protect metals, wait for signal, in Portuguese. Do more reading and you'll only see the case gets weirder. These people were into some strange stuff. The Italian Wikipedia article details reports of the same 2 young men setting up extremely bright, powerful, explosive fireworks. The lead masks must have been to shield their eyes from the bright flashes from the fireworks they used. Several days after their death, a UFO sighting sounding vaguely similar to their fireworks was reported. The strangest but most obscure report, though, is that another lead mask death happened 4 years earlier. Flying Saucer Review magazine reported that a man named Hermes Luis Feitosa was found dead in 1962 around the same exact area with the same exact type of lead mask positioned on his face. According to Wikipedia, investigations had revealed that the victim had gone to that place with the specific intent to experiment alleged psychic abilities that would have allowed him to pick up radio and television signals without the use of electronic means, but only through the power of mind. If all this is true, this seemed to be some kind of occult thing. If it was a ritual suicide, it might have been done with the intention of continuing to live outside of their physical bodies. Accidental death can easily be ruled out if the Hermes Luis Feitosa case is true. It's disappointing that there isn't more information about these spiritualists. Many have suggested they were a part of a group of people attempting to contact aliens. Story 9. The Devil's Footprints. Hoof-shaped footprints in the snow in South England that went for up to 100 miles. The footprints went over houses, haystacks, rivers, and even rooftops instead of going around them. It appears on Thursday night last, there was a very heavy snowfall in the neighborhood of Exeter and the south of Devon. On the following morning, the inhabitants of the above towns were surprised at discovering the footmarks of some strange and mysterious animal endowed with the power of ubiquity, as the footprints were to be seen in all kinds of unaccountable places. On the tops of houses and narrow walls, in gardens and courtyards, enclosed by high walls and ceilings, as well in open fields. Story 10. I told this one before, but Rico Harris. He was a massive 6'9" former Harlem Globetrotter basketball player who had drug issues earlier in his life, but had made a full recovery and was getting his life back on track. He was driving along California's Interstate I-5 from his home in Southern California to Seattle to live with his girlfriend. He was somewhere just north of Sacramento, exhausted, and told his girlfriend over the phone that he wanted to check out the mountains. All calls stopped since then. His car was found a couple days later by a patrolman near a rest stop in the mountains. A massive search was launched. No signs of him. The strangest part? A driver later reported seeing a massive 6'9" individual wandering down the highway just a mile from where the car was found a week later. A search was relaunched. Massive size 17 footprints were found in the ground that were not there before. They were getting very close, and then nothing. No trace, no body, nothing. Where did Rico go the first time he disappeared? Where was he for an entire week? And where did he disappear again? The fact that someone could disappear twice is what makes this so damn mystifying to me. Story 11. December 1996. Under the cover of the night, she walked into a small cemetery and sat up against a mausoleum overlooking the section where children were buried. She put on headphones, sipped the last of her brandy, and then slipped a plastic bag over her head. Next to her was a small Christmas tree, a backpack, and a Minnie Mouse fanny pack. She left a note saying she was deceased by her own hand, along with two $50 bills for her cremation. Her ashes sit in the local police department, and to this day, no one here in the DC metro area knows who she was. Story 12. Late to the party, but what the heck, I'll throw my hat into the ring. My favorite is the disappearance of Ray Gricar. Ray Frank Gricar was an American attorney who served as the district attorney of Center County, Pennsylvania, from 1985 until 2005. On April 15, 2005, Gricar went missing under mysterious circumstances and has not been heard from since. After he had been missing for over 6 years with no trace of his whereabouts, Center County authorities declared Gricar legally dead on July 25, 2011. That's the short version. The long version is he was the DA that oversaw Center County, and that includes Penn State University. There were rumors that at the time of his disappearance, he was looking into the Second Mile. The Second Mile was a nonprofit organization for underprivileged youth, providing help for at-risk children and support for their parents in Pennsylvania. It was founded in 1977 by Jerry Sandusky, a then Penn State assistant college football coach. The cops eventually found his car. The car contained his county-issued cell phone, but not his laptop computer, nor his keys, nor his wallet, and investigators identified no signs of foul play. On July 30th, 2005, fishermen discovered the county-issued laptop computer of Ray Gricar in the Susquehanna River beneath a bridge between Lewisburg and Milton. A Pennsylvania State Police computer expert analyzed the computer and found that its hard drive was missing. 2 months later, someone recovered a hard drive on the banks of the Susquehanna River, about 100 yards from the location of the laptop, however. It was badly damaged. An analysis by the FBI, U.S. Secret Service, and the firm Kroll OnTrack all attempted but failed to recover any data from the hard drive. Story 13. The Enigma of Kaspar Hauser. I find the story of Kaspar Hauser, an anonymous teenager found wandering the streets of Nuremberg in the early 19th century, fascinating. He appeared out of nowhere, with no family, friends, or anyone who could confirm his identity. He claimed to have been kept in almost total isolation for his whole life up until that point. His linguistic skills were severely limited, consistent with someone who had grown up with very little human contact. Rumors began to circulate that he was actually a German prince who had been swapped at birth with a dead baby to prevent his succession to the throne by scheming relatives. Rather than end him, they locked him up in complete isolation and left there to be forgotten, until somehow he was freed or managed to escape. He attracted several wealthy sponsors over the course of his short life, but none were successful at solving the mystery of his origins. He died under suspicious circumstances, stabbed by an unknown assailant, 5 years after being found. Of course, he may have just been a deranged fantasist or attention seeker. Who knows? Story 14. Disappearance of Asha Degree. She was a shy 9-year-old girl who randomly left her house around 2 a.m. on Valentine's Day, 2000, in pouring rain. Her backpack was found later, but she never was. It's even stranger because some of the more common explanations for child disappearances don't apply here. For example, there was no computer in her house, so she couldn't have met some stranger who lured her out. She did well in school and she had a supportive family, so none of the typical reasons children run away. She was also extremely afraid of dogs, so it was out of character for her to go walking around alone. There were never any real clues to her disappearance, and the trail went cold basically the day it happened. Story 15. Here's one I learned about recently. In 2000, a mummy was found around Pakistan with an inscription on the sarcophagus, claiming her to be the unknown daughter of the Persian king Xerxes Rhodogune. It caused a big hubbub, since it was the first apparent Persian mummy. It was fascinating because it had been mummified in traditional Egyptian fashion, complete with all the organs extracted, including the brain, and I even recall something about golden resin being found inside the body. But deeper examinations revealed a lot of smaller details that didn't add up. One archaeologist remembered being contacted by a middleman about a mummy that resembled the photos, and when he'd had a piece of the sarcophagus carbon dated, he found it was only 250 years old. The inscription also used a Greek form of the name instead of Persian. The bandages dated to the wrong period, and the stone pad was found to be 5 years old. And a lot of other experts noticed that the heart had been removed, which Egyptians absolutely did not do. They quickly decided she wasn't a Persian princess. But here's the freaky part. Further examination on the mummy revealed her to be a woman between 2021 to 25 who died around 1990s from some sort of blunt impact, like being hit by a car. There have been a trail of suspects from it since it was found in possession of some Pakistani and Irani dealers who were trying to sell it on the black market. But no one knows the victim's identity, and we probably never will. Story 16, the 1962 Alcatraz escape. I really hope they managed to escape even though they were criminals, because I don't think they ever injured anybody. I am very interested in crimes that require smart thinking and where nobody gets injured by the criminals. Popular Mechanics had a really interesting revisit article on this in their January issue. Evidently, one of their articles helped the guys figure out a portion of their escape plan. At least one of the families received correspondence mailed after the escape that matched the handwriting from the fugitives. A couple of years ago, there was a photo that surfaced from the family that supposedly showed the Anglin brothers in Brazil in the 1970s. The picture was analyzed by forensic experts who believe it is the Anglins. Declassified FBI files revealed that there was evidence at least one of the brothers was living under an alias in Brazil in 1965. Personally, I like to believe they made it and lived out the rest of their lives in peace. Story 17, the disappearance of Maura Murray. Disappeared after crashing her car into a snowbank in the middle of the night in the Cancamegas region of NH. Some witnesses saw the crash and even spoke to her, but by the time the police arrived minutes later, she was gone, her personal effects strewn around the car, and a rag stuffed in the tailpipe. K9s were used to track her scent, but it ended a few yards away from where she crashed. It's presumed that's where she was picked up or abducted by someone. Later that year, a man approached her parents and claimed his brother had kidnapped and ended her, but it was never proven. Story 18, the man from Taured. To quickly summarize, this guy had a passport for a non-existent country called Taured. He was picked up by authorities in Japan, I believe, using a fake passport from Taured. When shown a globe, he pointed to where I had supposed to be, but it wasn't there. He became visibly freaked out, and authorities confiscated his belongings and put him in a guarded room overnight until they figured out if any crime was committed. His room was guarded by 2 armed guards, and his things were in evidence bags at the police station. When checked on the next morning, he had disappeared from his locked guarded room. To make things even weirder, his belongings disappeared from the highly secure evidence room at the station. So fascinating. I personally think our reality could overlap others from time to time, and people and things can slip through until reality realizes it messed up and corrects itself. Story 19. Astronomers here. In my field, the WOW signal is probably the most famous unexplained mystery. It was basically detected in 1977 by a telescope that was just pointed overhead and looked very similar to what a SETI signal is expected to look like. It was first noted the next morning by an astronomer who wrote "wow" in the log margins and was never seen again despite extensive follow-up over the years. There have been various suggestions on what the WOW signal was, but no, it probably wasn't comets. Personally, based on my experience with man-made interference, RFI, in radio astronomy, I wrote a paper on distinguishing a real transient signal from that stuff. It was most likely RFI from a satellite or similar. But until we see another signal like it, we just don't know for sure, and that's very fun to think about. Story 20. Many will disagree with my reasoning, but the Billy Meier UFO hoax. It's pretty obvious it wasn't real. But to think about the lengths the man went to make his intricate narrative is interesting. Did his apparent motivations make any sense? How many people protected his secrets? Why did some parts of his story fool so many people and other parts so ridiculous? In many ways, it's an obvious story. A guy has an idea and takes it too far. The events themselves aren't unexplained, but he is a strange, mysterious, fascinating story by himself. Story 21, the Codex Gigas. Supposedly the Devil's Bible, it's been mysteriously saved multiple times from burning buildings. For example, it was chucked out of a burning building from the fourth floor or something. But the catch is that a single person can't carry it. It weighs several hundred pounds and no one was in the building. Nobody knows where it originated. Also, it's reported that there's evidence in the handwriting and ink that the entire book was written within a very short period of time, like a week or something. But the book is huge and should have taken years to write. Really interesting stuff. Story 22. I have a personal mystery that has plagued my roommate and I for several months. One morning, my roommate woke up and went to the bathroom. She found small, dirty paw prints in the bathtub, on the toilet seat, and in the sink. They looked like they belonged to a kitten. We were perplexed. We have no cats. We left no windows or doors open or unlocked the night before, and nothing was damaged in the morning. We're on the second story, and there are no holes in our walls, floors, or ceilings. We have no fireplace or dog door. We spent a good hour before work that morning searching for a cat hiding out in our apartment, to no avail. This was about 5 months ago, and it hasn't happened again since. But this is a mystery that'll bother me until I'm old and gray. Another fun dimension to the story is that we frequently joke about having spirits in the apt. Neither of us are superstitious at all, but living in an old, crappy apartment is more fun if you blame stupid crap on something supernatural. If a cabinet door pops open, we'll say, "Those dang spirits," and slam it shut. Now we've concluded that the spirits have a kitten. Story 23, the Fermi paradox. There should be hundreds of intelligent alien civilizations in our galaxy, so why haven't we found any of them? Perhaps we could possibly be one of the first in our galaxy. Isn't our position in the Milky Way, more towards the edge, a more stable area when compared more toward the center of our galaxy? Plus, we have nothing to base our definition of what an intelligent alien should be like in the first place. You can have avatar-like beings who have had an established society for millions of years but have never made space travel, or the highly advanced space-traveling beings who have advanced technology well beyond our imagination. Maybe they are so advanced, we are unable to detect them, but they can see us. Or the pessimistic idea that these civilizations did exist at one point but are now dead. Can be from inner conflict simply dying out, our galaxy is somewhat old, or a predator-type species ended other civilizations off.